Hey guys, welcome to the Neglected Podcast. This podcast is not to change your mind, but to invite you into somebody else's narrative. This is a podcast to give a voice to the neglected. It is also an opportunity for all of us to engage.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Neglected Podcast. My name is Nick Schultz. You can hit me up at Schultzy Time. We are at For the Neglected. We are here at City Church, and we've got our producer, Quinn, over there rocking it out. What's up, Quinn? Good to see you, man. We've got a special guest today. His name is Marcus Thompson. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Cannot complain. So, we have met each other, I think, twice in person.
Yes.
And both of those were
This is the third time.
This is third, yes.
Yeah.
So both of those were kind of rare, unique instances. The first one was, I think you actually came to my house.
Yes.
So you were friends with Giovanna, who's the other host of the podcast, and we were doing one of our racial reconciliation groups in our home, and you came to check out one of those and just see what it was like. And think you enjoyed it, and it was cool really having good conversations there with you about that. And then the next time we ran into each other at Savannah Coffee Roasters or something. You were having some breakfast or coffee and saw you and
in the before times.
Yeah, before the COVID times. Yeah. So you invited me over, and we just kind of talked and caught up again. Mm-hmm. And eventually, with Giovanna too, it's like, hey, you'd be a good person to have on the podcast and share your story and talk with us. And so we finally made it happen. So appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate it.
Well, cool, man. Let's dive right in. And we always start with just tell us about little Marcus and your life growing up. Where did you live? What was the neighborhood like? Your family dynamic, and kind of paint us that picture of what it was for you growing up.
Little Marcus.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's I grew up in Whiteville, North Carolina. It's a small town in southeast North Carolina, close-ish to the beach. If you've been to Wilmington, Wilmington, North Carolina, you've probably passed through it and didn't know it. But the first thing I really kind of remember is the houses that we grew up in. It's there were very few neighborhoods that blacks could really live in Whiteville, and this was one of them. It was a generational neighborhood. It was family after family after family, and we shared land with our grandparents. Well, we were staying in a rented house at the time, but my grandparents owned a house like right across the way, and that was the first house I remember. And I remember there was this time where I wanted a pony, like a real pony, live pony.
Okay.
And my parents somehow made it happen. I don't know how that happened, but
so you got a pony, man.
I got a pony, but that I never rode. I named it Dan. And I never rode the pony. It was the craziest thing. But we kept it and we took care of it, and finally ended up giving it to an organization in a neighboring town so that the pony could have a better life just being able to run around. But those years were good. My parents did a good job at really kind of hiding us away from, the things that could make a child cry from time to time,
Like keeping you away from the world's problems.
Yeah. And more or less, even when we made it to high school, we were all active. That was something that my parents wanted to make sure that we were active in, and this was for all of us. But myself, I have two sisters, by the way. I'm in the middle.
Okay.
Kevin in the middle. That's what they always said. Oh, my middle name's Kevin too, by the way. But they would always say you have to be active in order to make sure that we're not in the element. We're not in the bad things that happen after school or what have you. So I played baseball. I played football, basketball, track, band. My parents, FBLA, my parents made sure I was in all of this, but I enjoyed doing it too. So from the little Marcus up to high school, it was, the neighborhoods we grew up in. We moved from the house over behind my grandmother's house, which we'll talk a little later because some recent major events happened to that house as well. But up until high school, it was, it was good. It was good. We didn't have much, but we really had each other, and my parents did an amazing job not showing us that we didn't have much, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So were you what was the diversity like in either your neighborhood or your school, where you were at?
It's a small town, no more than 6,000 people. The diversity was about what it is nationally, maybe about 15% minority. But, we grew up in pretty much 100% minority neighborhoods. Didn't have much money going into those neighborhoods. There were dirt roads, so forth and so on. Never complained though. We just grew up on a dirt road. Hey, what's different about that? But yeah, the diversity was there. We had a fairly good diverse amount of teachers, I guess you could say. I remember at least maybe 4 good. All of my teachers were awesome, but I remember 4 of them were going up through the years were Black, and I enjoyed being in a classroom. And I think most of my teachers really, I lucked out when I got my teachers. That's all I know. They were all pretty good.
Did your parents have to prepare you or teach you anything about race specifically, thinking you were going to have to go through things that you remember or look back on it now, like they were trying to make sure that either things I was going to experience at a young age or when I became an adult, like I was ready for what the world was going to have? Because you said they tried to protect you a little bit from maybe some of the bad things, but was race some of those bad things what you might have to go through?
Yes, but they didn't really talk to us about race as a whole until later in life. They took a stance of let's love and then teach them to love. And they did mention, whenever we would go to away games and things like that. They just said just to be careful. They would be at all the away games, but of course we had to ride the bus and everything back and forth. It was a small town, so everybody was kind of accountable. We were fortunate enough to never have to really cross that racial barrier to where something happened to a family member or a loved one, And so they would have a conversation with us and just say, just know that everybody doesn't always look at you the same way that we do. Don't ever let anybody's opinion of you stop you from being a good person, stop you from being kind. And they really drilled that in. And we were, our family my family's full of good people, man. Even my young sister, who, if she's watching this, she's spoiled rotten, Crystal. Yes, you are. But even she, everybody was just, my parents did a really good job. I just can't speak any ill. I've never to this day, and my father passed in 95, but never saw them argue. Never saw them argue. And that is an incredible feat. They did, but they did it when we were asleep, or they did it in their bedroom. They didn't, anytime there was a disagreement, they kept it away from us. And I just, I applaud them for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. It doesn't always happen. I mean, it's very rare it actually happens.
Yeah.
Like that. So, that's good. You had the good family life. Sounds like you had a good school experience. So were you pretty unscathed going through high school and then going out of high school, or was there anything that actually, kind of brought you down or messed you up as you entered into your adult life after 18?
Well, it was, I think it was in high school when I found out that, no, I apologize. No, this was in middle school. Found out that my grandmother was very, very, very light skinned. Very light skinned. As a matter of fact, if you know who Sigourney Weaver is, it was like she was a carbon copy
Really?
of Sigourney Weaver. Yes.
Wow.
Black hair, the black curly hair, very light skin. And, my mother mentioned to us, actually, she wasn't even talking to me, but she mentioned that my grandmother used to have to go buy groceries for them because they weren't allowed to go get groceries. And of course, I had questions, I was like, why is that the case? Or why was that the case? Because we can go in the grocery store. And, there was some hesitation because my mother especially took the role that she had a strong belief that we should make our future based on what we have inside, not what we know or what was, it shouldn't be shaped by something external. And an example is when I was born, my legs were bent in such a way that I couldn't use them. And they said that I wouldn't be able to walk unless I did this procedure in which they had to break my legs sequentially over a series of appointments to straighten them out. And
Yikes.
Right. And my mother she said it was one of the hardest times in her life because she couldn't even go in the room, but she could hear me from where she was sitting and waiting for all of these appointments. But she didn't tell me this until I was going away for college. And I think it was, some people might say it's naive not to say, tell them this and let them know that this is what happened in this town and this is what they should know. When if she had told me that, I'm not sure if I would have been able to excel in athletics, which was, after she told me, I was like, wow, are you serious? Because I was a good athlete, I was one of, if not the fastest people, one of the fastest people at my high school. The coaches on football teams came to recruit me, you know what I mean? And I don't know if that would have been the case if my mind had been aware of that early handicap. And I won't even call it a handicap, but that early obstacle, where the doctor said, well, even with this, he just might walk. And I think that was a life lesson that I attribute to her. To this day, I still work out. I just don't do it as much as I used to. But, I will always thank her for not telling me about how my life started until I was able to process it, after I'd already made the decision to do all these things. And it was one of the best and most memorable things that she's done for me.
It's something crazy to find out later on.
It is.
Wow. And I just want to backtrack to your grandma, who you said looked like Sigourney Weaver.
Yes.
Was she just naturally like that light skin, or did she come from a mixed race parents, or was explain that a little bit.
She did come from a mixed race. She had Native American blood in addition to being Black as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a beautiful woman, loving woman. Oh my gosh, she was loving, but she did not play. But she did not play. We had a big bush out in front of their house, and it was full of switches, man. And I know I got at least 20 or 30 of those things. But our family on her side had Lumbee Indians. They were and Waccamaw. They were around in our area. They live around in that area, not necessarily in Whiteville, but that's pretty much what her blood was comprised of. And she was able to get away with passing for white. And
it's incredible. Native American and African American and passing as a white woman.
Wow. I mean, and she was very, even today, the Smith side of that family is my family is still very, very light skinned. They are. It's a strong gene in their family.
Mm-hmm.
In our family.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we come back to it, or maybe you have something to say about it now. But just like I know, there's sometimes differences the way people get treated, even now with being light skinned, African American compared to being darker skin. And did that ever manifest itself, or you saw it either at an early age or maybe later in life when?
That is a very good point. There is a thing called colorism within the Black community. And it was very funny because my family really ran the gambit. My grandmother was very, very light skinned. My father was very, very dark skinned. And you have me, my sisters in the middle, and my younger sister is very light skinned. I'm brown skinned, and my older sister is darker brown skin. And my mother was light skinned as well. My dad used to call her Chief because of her tone or what have you. It was a very eye-opening thing when I realized that even within our own community, darker skinned people were looked down upon. They were, and lighter skinned people like myself, I could say I'm pecan tan, but we were still, for lack of a better phrase, picked on because we quote unquote thought we were better than everybody else. And that was never the case. It's just perception, of course. And somebody else's perception is very difficult to change. But I think we conquered that, honestly, because our friends ran the gambit, and they still do to this day. My parents, above anything else, they expressed and wanted us to show love to everybody. It's my father was a pastor, and we had a very good relationship. When he passed, it was one of the hardest days of my life.
How old were you when he passed?
I was in high school. I was actually going into my senior year, and it was maybe a day or two in the beginning, from the beginning of the year. My older sister comes to the office to pick me up, which I thought was weird. We never got out of school early. And when I came down from class, she was in the office and she just couldn't compose herself. And I knew something was wrong because my dad had, so in early Vietnam, he was in the war. He injured himself, not during any type of combat, but it was a fluke accident, and he injured his hip. fast forward to 1994. I apologize. I said 95, 1994. And the same hip had worn the cartilage out because of that injury. And so he ended up having to have surgery on his hip to repair it. And, routine surgery. It was with a surgeon that he actually worked with. He was the nurse for the surgeon. And something happened, and there was an embolism that grew in his lungs, and that is what eventually killed him. And that day, I mean, I can see it right now before me. That day it was definitely it was one of the hardest days in the sense that I never expected that to happen. It was completely unexpected, but that's also the day that I realized that I had so much to be thankful for, because I found it weird that we were able to spend so much time together over that summer. We were cutting grass together. We were doing things outside together. We were just always together, and the night before he passed, I remember telling a friend of mine that we went to a JV football game. And I remember telling a friend of mine, I was riding with him, was like, do you mind taking me to the hospital so I can say goodnight to my dad, And I went up there, said goodnight to him, and, kissed him, and, told him I love him. He was very lucid. And that was the last time that I talked to him. And I realized that was something that a lot of people don't have, and so it was a trying time. But the way my family and friends rallied together was inspiring, man. Let me tell you, I had friends that, Jeremy and Jonathan Sellers. I remember these guys were twins, and they were crazy, but they were really good guys. We played baseball together for all these years. And they came and kidnapped me from the house and just rode me around Whiteville, which wasn't a long drive, you know what I mean? So, but, I remember them having the CD player that was sticking out on their back then this was high technology, okay? But they had the CD player, and they just, they figured out like one of my favorite songs, and they played it like the whole time we were there. We were just riding around. It was really cool because it did take my mind off of things for a moment. Gave me a chance to smile. And, just any number of friends that came over. One of my friends I remember, her name was Jan. I actually introduced her to her now husband, and which is really cool as well because they're still together. But Jan, she came over, and they were just, her and her mother were there, and they were just really sweet, very caring to everybody in the family. And then when they left, I noticed that their car was still over there after maybe about 10 minutes. And I went over there to make sure everything was okay, and Jan was just in the front seat just crying, and she couldn't go anywhere. And that's kind of when I realized that we don't always have to look alike for people to really care about you, We don't always have to agree for people to be able to look at the situation and see that somebody's hurting and know that they can't do much. So it hurts them,
Yeah, man. So you're going through something pretty tragic as you get ready to leave high school, and you're 18 years old and become a man for all intents and purposes. And
give or take.
Yeah. Age doesn't necessarily make us a man, but you're getting ready to go out on your own. So what is that time like? Where are you going after high school? And not only where are you going, but what's it like going there without your father, basically? And,
right.
what did you have to deal with maybe while you were going out on your own?
Well, I went from Whiteville High School Wolfpack and became a North Carolina State University Wolfpack in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I was proud to do this. You know, I was the second person in my family to ever go to college. The first was my older sister. And then my younger sister, tries to blow us all out the water and become a doctor. Who cares? And so she, NC State was a great experience, you know. That first night, man. That first night. I remember we went to McDonald's. I grabbed some food. You know, my mom dropped me off. She was so proud of me that tears were just running down her face. And, you know, my sisters were there. And I remember, you know, closing the door, getting out of the car and just watching them drive off. And, you know, went up to my room, and that's where it hit me. You know, we made it. You know what I mean? My mother, who's had the hardest year of her life, you know, got me into college somehow, you know. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a milestone, and I just cried, and I called her and I said, "Thank you for all that you've done." And so it really became evident that my mom had done an incredible amount that year, and my parents had done an incredible amount leading up to that, you know. And at that point, I just didn't think that anything I'd done up to that point had really said thank you enough. Mm-hmm. And so I had to call and just tell her that I loved her for it, you know. And so NC State, man.
Looks like you had a good time in college.
I did. It was we had a very good time there. That's where I met my wife. I had some good friends that came up and went to school there. I was actually accepted to to Shaw University and to St. Aug, but a lot of my crew was going to those schools, mm-hmm. and I did not need to be in that same school with them. It would have been a problem. Mm-hmm. But NC State was it was a great experience. You know, it was my first true experience away from home. Mm-hmm. Made a number of friends to this day, as a matter of fact, that are still friends to this day. As a matter of fact, one of my best friends, Wes, we met in college as well. And, you know, I don't know what my life would be like without mm-hmm. these friends that I made in college. But, you know, it was a great experience.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, what were you going to school for, and what did you do after? Did you start working in the field that you tried to get educated in, or what was that like?
How often does that happen?
Well, maybe back in the day a little bit more. Now, not so much. I don't know.
Right. I would say, I went to school for biology. And the more I learned, I guess, about my sophomore year in school, I learned I loved just the study of the mind. I love genetics and biology and chemistry, but I love the study of the mind even more. So I started taking classes for psychology, sociology, the social studies curriculum, and I ended up graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Applied Sociology. And I was going to use that to be a school counselor or some sort of family counselor, you know, very similar to JoJo, as a matter of fact. And I just never, once I got, I think the last year of college, I remember what happened. So my junior year in college, I ended up I moved out into an apartment and I ended up working as well. And I couldn't really balance the school and work. And so I realized that I was not doing well in school. So I said, let me go to work for at least this year and then get back onto campus and just focus on schoolwork. And, so that's what I did. I worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield full time. Ended up going back to school, but this time I was incredibly focused. And my last year was probably my best year there while I was still working full time and commuting from Raleigh, from deep into Raleigh, back to school and then back to work, which I worked in Durham. And I ended up staying at Blue Cross Blue Shield even after I graduated. So no, I did not initially get a job in my field of study. Mm-hmm. But I think that that field, my studies in college definitely helped me out later in life. It's just I've always been interested in the human mind and behaviors and emotions and how and what makes people go. Mm-hmm. And I think that information or that education has served me well in every position I've ever held. Even more so in the fact that I'm running for office as well. Mm-hmm. And I don't just want to blow hard on people. I want to actually know what's going on with people. I want to know, why did you open this business? Why did this passion drive you to this? And I want to know what made this life. If you're living check to check, how does that affect your life? Mm-hmm. What choices do you have to make and sacrifices that you have to make in order to make the best decision for your family? These are things that I need to know in order to just do the best that I can do to be a representative.
Yeah. What did you find out about yourself? Because you said you were really interested in behavior and psychology and delving into that. Mm-hmm. When you got to know more of it, were the things you discovered about yourself, whether it was like who you were then, how you grew up, or the way you think and act towards people, to yourself, like what would you discover about what made you tick, or some things you didn't know?
That's a good question. Actually, there was this class I took that taught us the Johari window, which is a 4-pane window. Mm-hmm. And in each pane is a different self. There's the unknown self, which is the self that nobody knows, including you. The known self, which you yourself know. The public self, which is the self that you show everybody. Mm-hmm. And the secret self, which is what you keep to yourself. Right. And that really kind of opened a door for me because, there is... I've always wanted to think that I was one of those people that would do the right thing in the right situation, given the right circumstances. But you just never know what people do. So it added what may motivate someone to not do a thing when you would think it would be an obvious thing to do. It just kind of added an extra layer of understanding because our mind is so complex. There's so many involuntary and voluntary things going on inside of it that you just don't know what you might do in any given situation. So you can't really condemn somebody for not doing something any more than you can congratulate somebody that did, because they've never had that situation happen before. And so I learned about myself that I have the public self that I show people is really my known self as well. I try to be transparent, especially to the people that are around me all the time. They'll attest to it. What you see is really kind of what you get. It's all on the table with me. I have too many people that have to hold me accountable for me not to be who I say I am. And that's really what I've learned from that one experience, and then subsequent experiences that stemmed from that. I actually sent the Johari window to a friend of mine the other day and say, this is something you would probably be interested in. And so, yeah, that's what I learned. I don't leave. There isn't much under the table with me. It's just what you see is what you get.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, as you're becoming an adult, one of the things you mentioned earlier, just want to make sure we covered at some point, was your grandma's house.
Yes.
And what happened and kind of what the events that unfolded before and after.
So my grandmother, we called her Nana, by the way. My Nana's house was the second house that we grew up in. It was a family house, a generational house. And it was built by my great grandfather in 1998, who was a former slave. And the story of what he had to go through to get that house built, to get the land to put it on, and then the house actually built it. I mean, I think it's just so inspiring because it was him, and it was a white lawyer in town. And the lawyer, they were both men that were years ahead of where they lived. They were just both men of vision. And the white lawyer he saw the value in equality and diversity, and he agreed to purchase the land, and then allowed my great grandfather to then purchase it from him.
Wow.
And just like that, my great grandfather was one of the first black men to own land in a southern town in the American South.
That's cool.
It was very cool. And the lawyer, he did that for a number of people. That neighborhood I was telling you about, all the land there were 6 properties in that neighborhood. All of them were brought about in some way or touched in some way by that lawyer. And so the amazing thing that is equality was on full display for this to take place. And so fast forward to June of this month or this year, someone broke into the home and ended up burning it down. And it was, I was actually home because my mother was in the hospital and sick. They broke in the second night after she went into the hospital. And so I just happened to be home checking on her. And my younger sister ran in and said, the house is on fire. It was now my mother's house. And as soon as we came out of the door, my sister lives right across the road. You could look up in the sky and just see an orange glow. And I was just like, no, this can't be the case. This can't be happening right now. And went over there, and it was burning. It was on fire. I remember the fireman saying it's just burning too hot. We can't do anything but manage it at this point. And that is firemen for the house is going to burn to the foundation. Yeah. And after, during this time frame, we had a chance to really kind of think about all the history that was lost in that house. It was there for over 100 years. It was the defining accomplishment of my great grandfather. One of the first houses to have running water inside in Whiteville. It was amazing. And then you would think we were sad, but we were incredibly encouraged at the same time and at first I thought I wasn't processing it right because I was just inspired, but also I was like, wait a minute, I should be sad at this too. And I was, don't get me wrong. But to know that we came from such vision, you know, to know that we came from such determination, you know, someone that was just not willing to say, I'm free, and let that be the end of it. He became free, and then he he built his own house in a city that he could have very well been killed for, you know, or not in a city, but in an area that he could very well could have been killed for. And that led to our family. That led to me. And yet another defining moment just a couple of months ago that made me see how important diversity is. It is. It felt good to learn.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. You know, what's the status now of the home and what's going to happen, or where your mom is, or did somebody get charged with anything? Or
yes, we actually, funny story, we chased the people. They were actually still there when we got there, and
what were they doing there?
They were
Just watching?
exactly. They were coming out of the house, and then my sister got there first, which my sister is both of my sisters are no joke. Let me just say that. But she is a straight up G. She was like, you know, she got there. We all own, well, I'm the only, believe it or not, I'm the only one of my siblings that don't own a weapon right now. Figure that one out. But anyway, she got there and she was asking the people, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, we just heard some type of explosion. We were coming over here to help out. The whole time, and another guy coming from around the back of the house. Now we knew all of this was not on the level because the storage units in the back of the house, they were broken into as well with cigarette packs that had their fingerprints all over them and missing items. So that is the running theory, which is and what they were charged for. But we ended up having to chase them because in all the flurry, we didn't even think to get their license plate number, and they fled the scene. So we ended up chasing them, and we got the license plate number. And then finally, I was just like, you know, this probably isn't a good idea because I'm not armed. You know, we don't know what they have in their car. We have this. They can't escape this. So let's go back and make sure that everything, you know, see what else we can do. But yes, 2 of the 3 have been charged, and all 3, no, I take that back. All three of them have been arrested, and they have been charged with arson, and there were 2 other charges on there. I can't remember. Breaking and entering was one, and then one other. And the status of the house now is the foundation is still there. People are looting the house, which really kind of hurts my heart because we were able to salvage some of my mother and my grandmother's ceramics. They used to do ceramics all the time. And the ceramic creation is cured in a kiln. And the temperature is so great. So it was able to survive the fire like as if nothing ever happened. It's just very fragile now. And people are coming over and just still just looting. We've taken as many things out as we possibly can. We've put up security measures. They actually stole one of the motion detectors that we put out there. It's been crazy.
Wow.
But we hope to somehow rebuild. You know, we were able to get the insurance money, but that really was just enough to take care of the mortgage. I don't know. We're hopefully going to rebuild on that spot, but you know, we're just trying to figure it out still.
Man, and how's your mom handling all of that?
Like a superhero, man. You know,
She's the OG.
She's really the OG. You know, she's staying with my sister, my older sister. And when we told her, we had to wait for weeks to tell her because she was still in the hospital. And at first, when she went in, she was not doing well. So we knew that the news would just not help her. And when we told her, she cried for a few moments, and then immediately she said, "But I still have you guys." And I wasn't there. Everything we lost can be replaced, with the exception of some of the pictures of the family. But I can't be sad because y'all are still here.
No,
it's
powerful.
Superhero, man.
Yeah, she is. Well, let's take it to where you're at now and what you're doing. So you've kind of laid out what you've experienced growing up and losing your father and liking the psychology and helping people and finding out what's going on with them, which is probably leading to part of what you're doing right now too, and trying to help people. And so you're running for an office position. What is that position, first of all?
So I am running for state representative for District 164. And that district is it's the west end of Savannah, Pooler, Richmond Hill, and Bloomingdale.
Okay.
Parts and small part of Hinesville. And
so why? You know, that's always my question is politics is messy.
Very. Very
messy. You're a guy that obviously loves people and has had a great experience and, you know, has a good life from what I can tell right now. Why mess it up and get messy in politics? Like what's your purpose for it?
Well, I think you hit on it. You know, I love people. You know, I love my entire life. You know, I've had some very, very ugly instances of humanity, but those are not the instances that I choose to remember or define my experience. I've always wanted to help people. I've always been a mentor, or, you know, I volunteered, or I was in the community. I was doing something always to help people. And I realized someone actually approached me about running for office, and they said, you know, I think you'd be an amazing state representative. I think you would do well to represent the people of your district. And I was just like, I doubt it. But I did research on what a representative does in their legislature. You know, there's a legislator, and they can influence any unknown number of things within the district. And one of those things that they could possibly influence is poverty. You know, it's bringing down the poverty rate. Maternal mortality rate. This has been something that Georgia has been a part of, has been number 2 in the nation for almost 10 years. This is something that we can actually have a measurable way to change. Just there was so much that I could do as a state representative to help thousands of people, not just maybe 5 or 10 people, you know, from volunteering. And once I figured that out, there was no choice for me. I had to do it. And that's why I'm running. It's not a pretty process. The political process, a friend of mine told me that part of the problem is the people that we need in office are turned off by the process.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's why I'm doing it, to help as many people as possible.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I appreciate about you as well is that, you know, in having conversation with you, is like you care just as much for the people that aren't going to vote for you as the people that are going to vote for you.
Yes.
And that you do want to represent everybody. And, you know, hearing your story too, I think that's been modeled by your parents and how they raised you and your grandparents and how your family was brought up, and that comes from something really deep, which is all the way back from when that white lawyer you were talking about helped out your great grandfather way back when, like when he didn't have to do it, but like it was the right thing to do, and he wanted to help him, and just see how that's went through your family to where you're at now and living that out. It's just a really cool thing to see that full picture of, you know, regardless of what's going to happen with me, like I'm going to help everybody.
Right. It is really cool when I lay it out like that, because I've never done something like this before,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so it's good to even hear it coming from me, and I love the fact that it's that over 100 years ago is still living in me, and I hope that I will pass it on to my daughter as well, you know, which I think I already have. She's an amazing little girl, mm-hmm. you know. And just to touch on what you said again, Marcus, one of my tagline is Marcus for all of us. I know there are people that I'm not going to get 100% of the vote. Nobody ever does. But I will fight for everybody in the district. Mm-hmm. And I would do the same for anybody, regardless of what they look like or where they came from or how they were raised. And I'm excited to do it.
That's cool, man. And it's great to hear that too, because you remind me of, you know, we talked about Al Hagen, who was on our podcast before too, and it's just one of the things that was inspiring about my friendship with him is that he's gonna do his best to serve people, mentor, love people, regardless if he wins that position or not.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really cool that if more people that were running for office, like, hey, we're going to be out there fighting for people that are in poverty. We're going to fight for kids who don't have fathers. We're going to fight for people that need to be mentored and kids that are aging out of the foster care. Like, we're going to do it regardless of whether I get this position or not.
Exactly.
And that's what's, you know, exciting to have friends like him and you that, you know, it's not all up to whether I get a position in office. It would help definitely because I can touch more people, but that's just who I am as a person. I'm going to do it no matter what.
Exactly. It's not going to stop.
Yeah. So, man, I appreciate that. And, you know, one of the last question we always ask in the podcast is what can somebody do to help out somebody, especially like making it personal, that's been in your situation, someone that's lost a father or has been through some of the things you have, or some of the things that you see that you're dealing with now, whether it's somebody that's lost a home and they don't know what to do about it, or has lost that parent, or doesn't know how to interact with that person that's running for office, just anything. What kind of advice and what tangible way can average citizen like me just make an impact in someone like yours life?
You know, I think the best way, and I don't think we see enough of this now, but just looking at somebody and understanding that person may be going through something that you have no idea about. Mm-hmm. And really kind of incorporating that in how you respond or how you interact with that person. Honestly, I haven't even posted on Facebook or anything about my house, you know, my mother's house. Mm-hmm. But it was a traumatic time. Yeah. You know, I don't typically let people know what's going on, so they never would have, and nobody ever really would have been able to pick up on it. Maybe a few people, but not really. And, you know, I think about Chadwick Boseman, who just recently passed away. That's right. Wakanda forever.
Indeed.
4 years. Nobody knew what he was going through. Mm-hmm. And yet he was still blessing people. How much could you do, or how much of a change could you make in somebody's life who's dealing with, I don't know, cancer, just by being nice? Mm-hmm. You know, just by letting them know that there's still sunlight in the world. I think just make sure as a regular citizen, just know that everybody's dealing with something.
Yeah. It's good, man. It's good advice, and I appreciate you. Thank you for your friendship that's hopefully only going to get stronger. And
Absolutely.
appreciate you spending the time to come out here and do this with your schedule and just share some of the things, like you said, that a lot of people don't know about. But
that's right.
It's going to hopefully help people that, one, get to know you better, but also, people have dealt with losing a parent that's meant something to them.
Right.
Or have lost something that, they can't get back that means so much, like a home or something like that. Or just maybe even inspiring people who wouldn't normally run for office to say, like, hey, it might not be like politics might not be your thing, but maybe helping people is, and you still might need to step up and do it. So
it is.
I appreciate you being willing to share all that and spend some time with us.
Thank you, Pastor Nick. I definitely appreciate this.
And it's funny how you still call me Pastor Nick. That's funny.
It's that respect thing. I just have to.
Oh, I know, it's so funny. It's like, man, I've been out of the game for almost 3 years now. I guess the title doesn't ever go away. But
I'll get around to just.
No, you call me whatever you want, man. Whatever you want.
No doubt.
I appreciate it. And Quinn, thanks for producing, man. Like always, City Church, thanks for hosting. And
thank you, sir.
Marcus Thompson, appreciate you being here, brother. You have a good one, sir.
You do the same.
We'll catch y'all next week. It's been Neglected Podcast. Peace.